What is up, guys? Matthew here, Actual Exotic Cars. Just like I said, I had a lot of videos coming down the pipe, and this is one of them. So my importing a car from Japan video somewhat blew up, at least by standards of this channel, and I thought I would do a follow-up. Basically what happened, ownership of the car, my Fiat Panda experience the last few months, if you will, and basically around a half year update, I don't know, 4 or 5 months or something like that of owning a Fiat Panda in the U.S., what it's like, getting parts, maintenance, what's happened with it, and basically did I get ripped off or not from Car from Japan. So this video is basically that. So let's start off with the premise. If you haven't seen my first video on this, I highly recommend it, but basically, long story short, I imported a Fiat Panda from Japan into the U.S., and the reasoning for this was I wanted a four-wheel drive car with a manual that was kind of quirky and got really good gas mileage, and the Panda kind of fit the description for that. So ended up buying a Panda. I ended up getting a 1996, and I'm not going to lie, I didn't know necessarily too many about these before I bought one, and I probably should have done a little bit more research than what I did, but I never do. So this is kind of my thoughts on it. So I got a 96 Panda, and the Panda, just a little backstory here, they were never sold in the U.S. They still make them today. They're completely different. The original generation, if you will, is from 1980 to 2003, which is crazy. I mean, they made them for, 23, 24 years before they did a facelift to them. And what was it, 85 or something? Yeah, here we go, 86, 2003. They called them the MK2, which is what I have. The original ones from 80 to 85, which look pretty similar. They have a different bumper here, as you can see. Grill is only part way. Those were the MK1s. I have an MK2, if you will, with the 1.1 liter fire engine, which I just assumed it looked like a Yugo. It had the same displacement as a Yugo engine. I just assumed that it was a four-wheel drive Yugo, and actually I made a video about that subject, and it is not it's not very much like a Yugo at all in any regard, really, other than the shape of it and I guess the engine displacement, and it still has a spare tire up front. But other than that, it is a completely different car after working on it for a bit. So let me get into the basics here. The biggest issue that I've ran into, and something, if you want something easy to work on, which I recommend you look this stuff up before you buy it. Don't just dive into things like I do, especially if you're financially restrained or whatever the deal may be. I think all in all, I got the Panda, including shipping and everything, was around 10 grand. The Panda only had 50,000 miles on it. It's a 96 car. It's a little bit older, but still had low miles. And again, like I said, everything that the vehicle had, in my mind, at the moment anyway, thought it was worth it. So basically, the first thing I would highly recommend is get some sort of owner's manual or guide. There are Fiat forums, if you will, which are useful. I would also go on those, but there's not too much information, especially stateside on these. As far as I know, there's only like a dozen or if that Pandas on the road in the States. And the biggest thing I ran into, I have a 96. They made these or sold them, I should say, in Britain up till 95. The 96 to 2003 Pandas, good luck finding any information on it. It's completely, as far as I know, they really only sold them in Italy and Japan, obviously, that's where I got mine, but some odd countries here and there, but not any English-speaking countries as far as I know. So I did get a Haynes manual for up to a 95. I have it on the screen here. Unfortunately, I don't have the book with me. But I highly recommend you buy one of these. It is 100% worth the money. I think I got mine on eBay or something. I know this is the Amazon. I would not pay $60 for this. I definitely did not for mine. But I would highly recommend that because, like I said, this is really the only information that you get. And on top of that, a majority of this manual is for the MK1. So my engine, there's a little tiny section in the back that says supplement, and that's basically everything related to my engine. The newer cars, there's a tiny little section because it has OBD1. It's another thing you have to keep in mind if you get something in the 90s. And unlike American cars, something I didn't know, the EU did not make OBD2 mandatory until 2001. In America, that was 96. So I was under the assumption I was going to have OBD2. I do not. I have OBD1. So that is definitely something you might want to look into. I just bought a little adapter for it. They're not that expensive, but be aware of what you get before you get it. So a couple odd things here and there. Reading through this manual, that I converted the octane, and European octane ratings and American octane ratings are different. But if you convert them, basically from what I read, you still need to run premium in this. So yes, you're saving on gas mileage, but you also need to run premium. So add that cost to it. I will say one nice thing. I am used to Eastern European vehicles, if you will. A lot of the consumables you can buy at your local auto store, which is really nice. So gas, for example, well, gas obviously, but oil, 10W40 oil. They actually recommend in the book 15W40, which is more of like a diesel. And actually, if you go to any auto parts store, you can pretty much only find it in diesel, but 10W40 also works as well. That's what I run. All the plugs, I had to change my plugs recently. I think I got those at AutoZone or something. The oil filter, actually Napa was able to cross-reference the one that I had in it, so I didn't have to order anything like that. Like I said, most of the consumables, you can still go to your local auto parts store and get those, which is very nice, especially having an exotic car like this. Anyway, I guess some of the issues that I've had with this thing since ownership. The first thing I noticed when driving is there was some steaming coming out of the one side when I was driving it down the road. Obviously, I was concerned. I popped open the hood. I didn't see anything overheating. It turns out it was coming from the wheel, and I had a brake piston that got stuck. So I actually ended up having to change that out. I should have made a video. I didn't. It was one of those I needed to get back on the road because this is my daily driver. And that was the first issue. I don't know. I think this happened like a month after ownership or something like that. Like I said, I was daily driving it. It's not like it's just a show car or anything like that. On top of that, I also have a engine code that's been kind of sporadic on and off the dash, and I've been trying to scan it. I haven't been able to get anything. Again, I'm hoping I didn't get ripped off, but that's also something that's happening. For all I know, it might just be an O2 sensor. I don't know what it is exactly. The biggest issue that I have had was I was burning through oil like crazy. So I didn't realize this till a couple months into ownership. When I first bought the vehicle, I checked the oil, obviously, and it was full. Everything looked good. The oil was just changed. Awesome. When I moved, I had to drive down to the city, and it was, a pretty long, like 3 hours round trip. I'm moving my stuff back and forth. And I was going through, I checked the oil, it was bone empty. I couldn't figure out why. It's like, screw it, I got to move. I just dumped some oil in there. I had to dump about 2 quarts. The Panda only holds 3 3/4 quarts total, so it was less than half the amount of oil that it was supposed to be in there, which is kind of scary to think about. And basically every 3 hours of driving on the highway, I had to add a quart of oil, which is not good. And what turned out happening is the oil seals for the valves were junk. And I had to, again, I should have made a video, but it was one of those, I was panicky and, trying to get, like I said, this is my daily driver, tear everything apart. And this thing compared to a Yugo, is a pain in the butt to work on. So nothing's very accessible. I will probably make a video on this soon, actually showing it around the car and working on it. And if you're interested in that, please let me know, because I've had to do a decent amount of work on this so far. Not that I wanted to, but unfortunately. And for me to get to the valve seals, you have to pull the alternator belt off, then you have to pull another belt off from the AC compressor, so you can pull a pulley off that goes in front of the timing belt. Therefore, you have access to the crank bolt, the timing belt, and all that, because the one timing belt gear has to be removed in order to take the camshaft off, which you have to take off because it's an overhead cam, and you need to get that out of the way. And there's a special tool that you have to buy in order to compress the valve springs. That way you don't take the entire head off. Anyway, it's a pain in the butt, and I did a lot of research into it, and this is kind of the first time when you're burning oil, basically, just from what I've read, it's usually either rings or it's your valve seals. I did a compression check. I had compression in all the cylinders, and sure enough, cylinder number 1, when I got the valve seal out, it was completely dust. Like, there was almost nothing remaining of the valve seal, and the plug was covered with oil. I'm assuming that was the issue, and sure enough, ever since I replaced the seals, I haven't had any noticeable oil burning, which is very nice. But basically, from what I read, though, the cause of that is from improper installation, whether that be from Fiat themselves or somebody's repairing, doing something with the engine, which I wouldn't imagine. It only has 50,000 miles on it, and it's kind of shady, but in my opinion, was an ongoing issue. It kind of just got covered up. They slapped some oil in there, and then they sold it at auction, and I got it. So again, it was like a 4-hour job once I figured out what I was doing. So by the time it was all said and done, it was like a full day in the garage. But I did end up getting that done myself, and I was able to get all the parts stateside. Next big thing, I guess, I shouldn't really say big thing, it was during the winter. I try to wash my car at least once a week, get all the salt off of it, living in salt belt, or rust belt, I should say, and all that. And I took it to the car wash. I went to work. I got out of work, and I went to shut my door, and it wouldn't shut. The water seeped into the lock and froze it. So that is definitely something I would keep in mind. I had to hold my door closed all the way home that night, and thankfully I was able to keep it in the garage, and I was able to defrost. But I practically ripped the door handle off trying to slam the thing. Water can get in your locks. It will freeze. You will not be able to shut your door. You'll have trouble opening your door. So obviously keep that in mind, especially if you're washing your car in the winter like you probably should be, especially with a car like this. Last thing I could say, my AC went out. I had AC when I first had the vehicle, and I've been working ever since, trying to, the last couple of weeks, since I did my little oil seal repair. It stopped working. The switch works, the compressor works, all the connections look good, so there's something going on there. I haven't really found a solution yet. Once I do, I will keep you updated on that. But that is kind of the update with the Panda, if you will, everything mechanically. Obviously, I was just kind of expecting to drive it, not really worry about it too much. I guess for you guys, that's good, because the more things go wrong, the more content I have, and the more I get to work on it, the more I get to figure it out. But like I said, it is a pain to work on. I would keep that in mind. As far as getting parts are concerned, basically there's two sites that I've been using a lot. One is oldtimershop.eu. They are based out of Slovenia, which I actually went to last year. But they have a plethora of Fiat Panda parts, and I'm not going to say all necessarily, but most of the parts they could want. Let's say I need some, what are these? Wheel cylinders. Let's say I need some brake shoes. And they do a pretty good job of giving you part numbers, labeling exactly what they are, which ones they fit on. So here, 4x4 after 1993, we'll have a 4x4 cross-reference guide. And another cool thing is with this website, obviously they go out of Slovenia. Shipping takes usually a couple weeks, but you can take that part number and find Midwest Bayless is a website that I've been using. It's in Ohio. I live in Michigan. I order something on this website. It comes to my house in like 2 days, at least. So shipping's really fast, and they've been pretty good. I can literally take that number, and let's do a little experiment here. So let's say I need some brake discs for my Panda or whatever it may be. I could basically go here. This is the numbers that I need. I can find one of these numbers. I can go to Midwest Bayless or another classic Fiat shop in the States. I can search for it. And a lot of times, a majority of the times, it seems like anyway, bam, they'll have the part. I can order it. The prices are fairly reasonable, $26.79, and it is literally on my doorstep like 2 days later. So part-wise, especially from what I'm used to with Eastern Bloc cars, this is very handy. They also carry Yugo parts, which the Yugo, again, was based off of the Fiat, which is extremely nice. And they even have a section right here for it, 128/Yugo. So getting parts is not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. Like I said, a majority of the time they have it, and if they don't, I have ordered some parts off of Old Timer Shop, and I've had some pretty good luck with it. You can also find shops throughout the internet. There's a couple more in Europe, and also eBay also has a lot of parts too. So definitely not the same issues that you would with Eastern Bloc cars, and especially Russian cars today, which I've already made a video on, but it can definitely be difficult at times. So, like I said, service is kind of, I guess if you have issues, you can get parts. I was able to find some local mechanics that would work on this. There's actually a classic European shop about an hour away from where I live that said they would love to work on this if I ever have any issues, which is nice. So getting people to work on it, if you're not necessarily car savvy, or getting parts is not extremely difficult, especially compared to some of the other vehicles that you could buy. So basically, a little update and a conclusion. Do I regret this purchase? No, I do not. Would I still recommend getting this car? Yes, I would. If we could go back in time, it's kind of sketchy. Like I said, when you're buying a car from the different part of the world, you don't really know necessarily what you're getting. And like I said, the oil thing was definitely a big concern. Hopefully, there's no other hidden bugs that I'm unaware of at this moment. But so far, I haven't necessarily found any. Like I said, it is really weird to work on. It's difficult finding information, and it's that weird era of the 90s where things are starting to get computerized, but they're not fully computerized, so there's lots of chips and boards and this and that, and trying to find any of those a good luck. It's very difficult. I still haven't found a good part diagram for this vehicle at all, unlike the UAs where I can find a good parts diagram. Everything's simple, it's mechanical. You can usually jerry-rig things and get it to work without having to order parts from abroad, and with a Panda, that's not necessarily the case all the time just because of the era it was made in. Like I said, the lack of information, surprisingly. It is a fun car to drive. There will be more videos on this in the future, and just thought I would kind of compile, I guess, my post-purchase process and let you know what's been going on in the background. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.